What is poppin' YouTube? Bringing you 5 Dynasty buy lows. Starting off with buy low number 1 is going to be Diontae Johnson, who finds a new home with the Carolina Panthers. Trade goes down where Diontae Johnson was owed a $3 million signing bonus by Friday, was traded to the Panthers for Diontae Johnson, a 7th round pick, and the Panthers traded back Deontay Johnson and a 6th round pick. So really just like a 6th and 7th round swap with 2 players involved. And Diontae Johnson now finds himself on an offense where he is the clear alpha. And we've been talking about Diontae Johnson as an absolute target hog over the last few years on this channel. I have been a huge Diontae Johnson truther only because if we look from 2020, had 144 targets, 2021, 169 targets, and 2022 had 147 targets. Now this year in 2023 only had 87 targets, but he did only play in 13 games compared to the previous 3 seasons. So Diontae Johnson, targets are earned, not given, and my man earns a ton of targets. If we saw what Adam Thielen was able to do with Bryce Young in his rookie season, just imagine what Diontae Johnson's going to be able to do with Bryce Young and with Dave Canales, who absolutely got Baker Mayfield back to being a top-end level quarterback in the NFL, or even just a middling quarterback, a starter in the NFL. He could do the same thing with Bryce Young. And like I said, he's going to get a value bump on keep trade cut, because right now on keep trade cut, he's the wide receiver 47. So even if he bottoms up, gets that push up to wide receiver 38 is probably where he ends up ending after this Carolina's push. We're talking about him in the same range as guys like Christian Watson, Terry McLaurin, Christian Kirk. Like, give me Diontae Johnson and those targets each and every day of the week. And the thing that surprised me about this year, he's always been known as a guy that just hasn't been able to get in the end zone. 2022 had 0 total touchdowns, but had 5 in 2023, and in 2021 had 8 total touchdowns. So if he can demand those targets, he can get in the end zone for the Panthers. So let's be clear, the Panthers aren't going to be a good team this year. They're going to have to throw the ball. Absolutely love the value right now on Diontae Johnson. So like I said, if you're looking to trade him, if you could trade a guy like Terry McLaurin, Christian Kirk, Chris Godwin to go get Diontae Johnson, I would do it. And you could probably even get away with a guy like a Keenan Allen, or trading away the 202, the 203, the 204 range. That would be comfortable for me to go trade for Diontae Johnson, who is only just turning 27, so he's about to hit the absolute prime of his career. Then we move on to our second guy that I think you should be buying low right now, and that is going to be Josh Downs. Now, Michael Pittman gets re-signed for the Indianapolis Colts. We have Anthony Richardson coming back off of injury, and so the worry has been with the Colts, are they going to bring in another wide receiver? Now, the draft hasn't happened, so there's a good chance that in the first round, the Indianapolis Colts either address the cornerback or wide receiver position. I absolutely love some Josh Downs with the Indianapolis Colts after what he did this rookie season. We're talking about only 9.2 fantasy points per game, put him as a wide receiver 51, 98 targets, 68 receptions, and 771 receiving yards, 11.3 yards per reception. We love what we saw out of Josh Downs this year, and his value is kind of taking a hit. That he hasn't been in the news. He hasn't been getting any buzz like these rookies. Right now, as wide receiver 41 on keep trade cut. Like we said, there's guys like Chris Godwin, Adonai Mitchell, Keenan Allen, Romeo Doubs right around Josh Downs. So I think Josh Downs, this is a perfect buy low opportunity, especially in this free agency period, to go address that wide receiver position. Go get him as your wide receiver 4, your wide receiver 5, to get a young depth piece that honestly, there was parts of last year when you were looking at him in that receiving class and you were like, he's right there with Zay Jones and Jordan Addison on certain weeks. So go give me some Josh Downs. I would love to see him continue to take that year 2 step on top of what he already did in year 1. Next guy that you should be buying low right now is Saquon Barkley. And I hear you're going to say, Caleb, goodness gracious, great balls of fire. There's absolutely no way that Saquon Barkley should be a buy low. And I agree, but it depends on how you value Saquon Barkley. And as we can know, Saquon Barkley is getting up there in age. He is 27 years old, so he has passed that 26-year-old age apex. But the Philadelphia Eagles just did exactly what the San Francisco 49ers did a year and a half ago when they said the piece that we're missing is an elite level running back. And I know that Christian McCaffrey and Saquon Barkley, for a while there, they were talked about in the same realm, especially when they were rookies, especially when they started their sophomore seasons. But ever since Saquon Barkley's injury, he has not been discussed in the same light as Christian McCaffrey-esque. But even this last year, RB9 on points per game basis, 15.9 fantasy points per game, and he was running behind the absolute worst offensive line maybe in the NFL. And then you add on top of the fact that Daniel Jones got injured in the year. They're playing with backup quarterbacks. They absolutely have no one to throw the ball down the field to. Darren Waller is just a shell of his old self. What were you expecting Saquon Barkley to do this season? But he still finished as a top 10 RB. Gets added into this Philadelphia Eagles offense that's absolutely loaded. And so I know what you're going to say. And you're going to say, Caleb, cool, perfect. His yards per carry went down from 4.5 to 3.9 this last year and had only 41 receptions. You're going to say, Caleb, he really hasn't had a high-end receiving like in his 2018 season when he had 91 receptions. He really has never been able to get back to that type of receiving back when Eli Manning was getting a little bit older, immobile, check down king. And Jalen Hurts doesn't check the ball down. I totally hear you. And then you're also going to say to me, Caleb, they love the tush push. DeAndre Swift wasn't able to get in the end zone. So how are you projecting Saquon Barkley to get in the end zone? Saquon Barkley put up these numbers last season with only 10 total touchdowns. 10 total touchdowns, 15.9 fantasy points per game, RB9. Can Saquon Barkley get 12, 13, 14, 15 total touchdowns on an offense that's absolutely going to be explosive and going to be playing with the lead a lot of the games in the second half? Can he get in the end zone one a game? Can he average 1.5 touchdowns a game? I think that's potentially something that Saquon could do, even with Jalen Hurts stealing some of that goal line work in the end zone on the read option. But I can't imagine you trying to choose between Jalen Hurts on a read option or Saquon Barkley. Absolutely going to be electric with the RPO too, with AJ Brown and Devontae Smith. So absolutely love some Saquon Barkley. Like we were saying right now on Keep Trade Cut, he is the RB9 overall player 57. So some guys that are around him: DK Metcalf, T. Higgins, TJ Hawkinson, JSN, a 2026 early first round pick, Kenneth Walker, Kyle Pitts. Now Saquon Barkley, like we were saying, he's definitely enhanced in value. So maybe you missed the absolute buy low opportunity. But when we're talking about the way that this Eagles team heading into the rest of the season, right now, I know his price went up, but it's about to still be going up. So right now, you're still going to be buying low compared to where the stock's going to be by the time the season starts, especially by the time redraft season starts, and Saquon Barkley is most likely going to be a first-round redraft pick. So go get some Saquon Barkley, like I said. Go trade a DK Metcalf, go trade a JSN, go trade a TJ Hawkinson, especially if you're going to be competing to be your RB1, be your bell cow. Absolutely love some Saquon Barkley as a good buy low opportunity. My next buy low opportunity is going to be Joe Mixon. Now, I am a Cincinnati Bengals fan, so seeing Zach Moss come in to replace Joe Mixon, I haven't been the biggest Joe Mixon fan as of late. I can admit to that, even though this year, RB11 finish, RB7 finished the year before, and then RB5 finished the year before that. So he has been great for fantasy football, but for like real life in the playoffs, Joe Mixon really hasn't been the guy that I want. But still, 4 yards per carry this last year with no Joe Burrow. They were keen in on the running game. I mean, Jake Browning was a really good backup quarterback, but it absolutely wasn't great. 52 receptions, 257 rushing attempts. Now all of a sudden gets into a situation with the Houston Texans. And the Houston Texans have been in a ton of shootouts, so there's going to be a ton of opportunity and volume. We just saw Devin Singletary get a massive contract from the New York Giants based off his very mediocre play last season for the Houston Texans. It was better than when he was with the Bills, but still, a Jag got that type of contract with the Giants. And all of a sudden, you bring in Joe Mixon, and I know a lot of people are going to say, well, Dameon Pierce is still there. Joe Mixon, they didn't just trade a 7th-round pick to make sure that Joe Mixon couldn't enter free agency to not start him. Joe Mixon is still going to be the starter, and I know he's getting up there in age. He's 27.6 years old. He's definitely lost a little bit of a step in athleticism, but still was a 1,000-yard rusher last season. And 12 total touchdowns, that's great, but I think he can end up right around there again. Now, like I said, I think the Cincinnati Bengals offense, would I take Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins over CJ Stroud, Nico Collins, and Tank Dell? I mean, yeah, but it's pretty close. It's pretty darn close. And when we're looking at Keep Trade Cut right now, Joe Mixon is one of those aging veteran running backs. And we're going to be putting out a video later this week talking a little bit more about these aging running back dynasty values. But when we look at him right now, he's RB32, overall player 138. We're talking guys like Blake Corum, Zamir White, Jahan Dotson, Jonathan Brooks, Nick Chubb, all above Joe Mixon. Give me Joe Mixon over all of those guys. Now, Joe Mixon probably goes up a little bit in value. So you're looking at maybe a guy like a Keon Coleman, a Kendre Miller being traded for Joe Mixon. But as much as I love Derrick Henry's landing spot, and I know we didn't talk about Derrick Henry as a buy low, because it's really not going to be a buy low, just based on his age and based on his situation, the best possible landing spot for an RB in this free agent class. We do love Joe Mixon, and I think it's a little bit underrated of a landing spot. So especially if you're competing roster, go out and go trade for Joe Mixon. Now, if you're not competing, definitely try to get out on Joe Mixon. This is probably a good sell high for you opportunity, but I like the buy low opportunity because he's running back. Once they land in a situation like this, as we creep forward towards the season, it's going to get more expensive and more expensive to get them. So I know the dynasty community as a whole, we don't love buying running backs this early in the offseason because a lot of things can change. But buying in on a Joe Mixon right now is going to be a lot cheaper than it is once we get to July, once we get to August. So I like Joe Mixon as a buy low opportunity. And my final buy low opportunity, and this might be the juiciest one of all. If you skipped ahead to this part of the video, I do not blame you. You're going to say to me, Caleb, you're an absolute idiot. Why are you in on Justin Fields? Especially after the fact that the NFL has told us they are not in on Justin Fields. Ladies and gentlemen, the reason I'm in on Justin Fields is because his stock has always been up and down. And now I hear he's probably not going to be a starter in 2024. Now, we saw a ton of injuries last season, so there's a good chance he lands on a team and he probably ends up starting a few games. But when you're building out your Superflex Dynasty roster, he's probably either been your QB1 or your QB2. So it has been quite the fall from grace, and he's just going to keep falling on Keep Trade Cut. But right now, he reminds me a little bit of this point of where you had to look at him as a stock and say, honestly, This is where Trey Lance was when he was competing with Brock Purdy. Are you going to buy in or are you not going to buy in? And now a lot of people bought in and absolutely got burned with Trey Lance when Brock Purdy beat him out. Trey Lance gets traded to Dallas for that 5th round pick and he's a backup. But let's say things changed and Trey Lance was actually able to beat out Brock Purdy. You would have bought in a little bit lower than expected. Now, Justin Fields right now is way lower than expected compared to even where that was a year ago. When we're looking at Justin Fields, he's QB 19 and that's just going to continue to drop. We're talking guys like Josh Jacobs, Jaden Reed, James Cook, Rashad White, Deebo Samuel, George Pickens, a 2025 mid-first. Now, if you ask me honestly, he's definitely going to keep falling because I value him somewhere around the 201 to 202 right now in Superflex leagues. So I'm definitely not giving up anything of like a Dalton Kincaid or 2025 mid-first, not even giving somewhere like I said, a 108, 109, 110 in your Superflex picks. No, I don't think you need to do that. Definitely re-roll, draft one of these young quarterbacks. If you need it in the draft, draft a wide receiver. That's what I would do. In the case that you do have the depth, you do have the flexibility, maybe you're a contender and you have 2 solid quarterbacks and you can go poach Justin Fields to be your QB3 and hold on to him for a little bit. This just reminds me of there's not a lot of opportunity of buying low on a quarterback and it actually working out because in the recent bias, a lot of you in the Dynasty community, you're going to think of Deshaun Watson. You're going to think of Trey Lance. But I just have this feeling with Justin Fields that he's going to get another shot. Now, the question is, does he get a shot this year? Does he get a shot next year? So that's really where your patience is going to have to kind of weigh because even if he is going to be a QB2, I mean, he probably falls somewhere around 110 to 120 on keep, trade, cut rankings, probably goes down to like QB25. So QB20, QB21, QB22 prices, that is what I'm looking to pay right now because yes, maybe the floor bottoms out, but then maybe you lose out on the opportunity to actually trade for Justin Fields. Because if we honestly look at him, I know maybe from a real life NFL perspective, Justin Fields doesn't feel like the best quarterback in the NFL. But the fact of the matter is, I understand Jacoby Brissett. The NFL's telling us Jacoby Brissett, Gardner Minshew are better quarterbacks than Justin Fields. I don't necessarily think that's the case. I think there's something happening in that Chicago Bears front office. But I mean, QB9 on a points per game basis this last year, QB5 the year before that. He has top 10 quarterback point per game statuses when he's able to get that starting job. So I'm excited for him. He also has never thrown over 400 passing attempts in a season, always averaging somewhere around 370. He's been averaging somewhere around 330 in his NFL career. So maybe if he got in a more pass-happy offense, that would help him. But he also has the rushing capabilities where in 2022, he was an 1,000-yard rusher, had 657 rushing yards this last year. So he's the ultimate Konami code quarterback that we love to see. And so I understand wanting to re-roll, sell off on Justin Fields, but I actually think this is a great buy low, especially if you're a contender when you look at this depleted asset, but we know where it could get back up to in the next few years because Justin Fields is still only 25 years old. So maybe he hits the pine. Maybe he gets a starting job next year. But next year, he'll be 26, be 27. He will get one more shot in the NFL. All these quarterbacks get one more shot. We saw Sam Darnold get one more shot. Now, I'm not saying he's going to have to go somewhere, be the third stringer, and then all of a sudden you're going to have to wait 3 or 4 years holding him on your bench. Like, that is the most crappy situation that would happen for Justin Fields, but that is definitely in the range of outcomes. But I think the range of outcomes that I'm predicting that I am betting on with Justin Fields and his talent is that he will land in a situation as a backup. Maybe he learns this year. Maybe he learns behind Lamar Jackson this year as the backup and then can go get a starting job in 2025 when a lot of teams, like we said, Kirk Cousins is all of a sudden a top 12 quarterback in the NFL, which is crazy to say. A few years ago, we were talking about Kirk Cousins as a middle of the pack guy, but that is how dire the quarterback situation is in the NFL. So a guy like Justin Fields that has all the traits that could be an elite level NFL quarterback are there, and he's an elite level fantasy football producer. So I will bet on that each and every time, even if I end up striking out, because at some point I am going to hit gold, and I believe Justin Fields is definitely that great buy low opportunity. And maybe you wait a week, but the thing is, the moment that he gets traded somewhere and maybe he has the chance to be a starter, that would be the moment that I start to get a little bit worried, and you kind of missed a little bit of this buy low window with Justin Fields. So if you like Dynasty Fantasy Football content, hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.